monthly Kern Valley Healthcare District Board of Directors meeting to order at 6:02. Sorry, I'm a little jet lagged from a trip from Toronto. I came straight here.
Hey.
Item C is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Director Cass. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Director Parks. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. If you'll please rise, Director Bush will lead us in the flag salute.
Charlie Bush. Okay. Will you do the pledge with me? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And those that wish to remain standing, our CFO, Chet Beater, will lead the invocation.
Our Father in heaven, we pause this evening to give you thanks for this opportunity we have to meet at a regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Kern Valley Healthcare District. And Father, we ask thee to bless us this evening, that those things that we would say and do would be in accordance with our mind and will, and for the betterment of the Kern Valley Healthcare District. We're grateful, Father, for the fact that we do have a hospital here. It is functioning, and we are grateful that we can provide those services to those visitors and members of the community that would seek and need those things that would be available for them in healthcare here. Help us always to do thy will and to dedicate things in the time that we do unto thee and thy ways. And this we ask in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
And Director Cassis will read the mission statement.
This is the mission statement of the Kern Valley Healthcare District. We will provide high-quality, efficient patient care services that respond to community and provider needs. We will provide leadership in health promotion and education for our patients, residents, medical staff, employees, and community throughout the district.
Okay, thank you, Director Cassis. Item D is the closed session report. Scott, do you have anything to report?
Yeah, in closed session, council and the board discussed the government claim of John Thames, and the board gave direction to council and the CEO regarding the claim. No other items were discussed, and that's it.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Item E is public comment. Is there any public comment this evening? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. These are routine and non-controversial items. Does anybody want to pull anything before we approve?
I move we accept the consent agenda as submitted.
Okay, moved by Director Cassis. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Director Elliott. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the consent agenda carries. Item G, reports, a foundation report. I don't see Ms. Hess here, but is there?
She's in Cancun, and Judy Hyde's not here.
Okay. So no report this month. Item 2 is the auxiliary report. Ms. Rubert, auxiliary president, welcome.
Thank you.
Nice, Cindy.
Well, I don't have much of a report tonight either, but since we put up the galvanized around the property, we've had no incidences to report. So the thrift store is doing great. We're getting ready, and so is the gift shop. Ellen placed her order for Christmas. And as soon as Halloween is over, we're going to start bringing out Christmas. So, but if you do need a costume, come see us. We got lots of costumes. And then on Sunday the 29th, I had 4 ladies come with me over to St. Jude's Church for the white mass. They had a red, white, and blue mass, and that honors all firefighters, paramedics, policemen. So I had 4 ladies that represented the hospital with me. So Tony and let's see who else. Kathy Ernst, Jeannie Pearson, and myself were the four of us that were there for it. And it was very nice, very prestigious. It was
Good.
like, it was awesome. It was a wonderful day, so. That's all I have.
Thanks for representing.
Any questions for Cindy before she leaves the podium?
I do notice the galvanized steel up there. How is that affixed?
It is, what we did is, we placed it on the inside of the post. 'Cause
Right.
The fencing is on the exterior of the post. And then what we did is we used, a self-tapping sheet metal screws.
Oh, okay.
And screwed it into the post from the inside, so from the outside,
Yeah.
there's no way through it.
Yeah.
And, so far, I mean, we've got a little more work to do over, they did break in one time, coming through the neighbor's facility and then cutting our fence over there, so I plan on extending that galvanized over to that area that's kinda hidden behind the sheds. And then I'm getting close to having proposals to maybe enclose the sorting shed, to see if we wanna spend that amount of money, because once it's enclosed, then we could roll down a door and padlock it, then there's really very little outside for people to break into, so.
Gotcha.
We'll see, we're working through each of the steps.
Well, you did a nice, it looks good.
Yeah, it doesn't look bad at all, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Item 3 is the medical staff report, and Dr. Finstead is not here.
I
Oh,
will
yeah.
give his report, yes.
Oh, okay, Tim, thank you.
Pharmacy and Therapeutics Committee met on September 13th. The committee reviewed 13 policies. They approved 12 of those with some changes. The committee discussed a referral from antibiotic stewardship program regarding possible restriction of certain antibiotics and agreed to that a policy will be written on that. So that'll be coming forward to in a future meeting. The committee reviewed and approved 2 formulary requests. They also reviewed various monthly and quarterly reports and studies, so those were all accepted. The Medical Executive Committee met on September 17th. 2 credential files were reviewed and approved for reappointment. That's Dr. Sharma and Dr. Lopez, which were on the consent agenda tonight. The committee reviewed and approved 12 policies, which were the ones from above. They also reviewed and approved 2 formulary requests. The committee reviewed regular reports on various things that they normally receive, and those were accepted. The antibiotic stewardship program met September 18th. The committee discussed the upcoming new CMS requirements and possible changes that could be made to the electronic health record system to accommodate those changes. And the committee, again, also reviewed their regular reports, and again, no outstanding issues that were identified there. Infection Control Committee met on September 20th. Committee reviewed their regular quarterly and weekly reports. No extraordinary items that were identified there, so that is the medical staff report.
Are there any questions for Tim regarding Dr. Finstead's medical staff report? Okay, hearing none, thank you, Tim.
Your Honor.
And you're up again for the CEO report.
Okay. Just in trying to keep the board apprised of some of our contact with the legislature, I sent a letter off to Governor Newsom asking him to veto SB 227, which was the staffing bill that made it through the House and to his desk. At this point in time, interestingly enough, he has not yet signed it. It is believed that he probably will. He has till October 13th to do so. Otherwise, it doesn't get approved. I also made calls to Shannon Grove and Devin Mathis with regards to AB 5. This was the bill regarding independent contractors. There's some language in that bill that could have significant ramifications on hospitals as it relates to our use of independent contractors such as registries and other services. There were certain exclusions that were made for physicians who are independent contractors to hospitals, but there are a number of other areas where we could still be impacted. And so the governor did sign that bill, so that is going into effect, I believe, in January. The plan is that CHA will file a new bill next year to modify that bill to resolve the issues that the hospitals throughout the state are having with that bill. And the governor indicated that he would be willing to work with us on those things. Again, I think there was a big timeliness issue trying to get this off the ground, obviously because of some of the major issues that were being confronted out there with Uber and Lyft and some of these other types of programs. And so I think he wanted to get that going, but left the door open for modifications to the bill later. So those will be filed Pleased to report that the train project is moving on. Oshkosh sent us notification that they have approved our plans for the new boilers and chiller, which is phase 2. That work will begin within the next 2 weeks. They'll actually start installing those. And so that's terrific. Love to have those in before the real cold weather hits and so forth. We continue to get notices from SCE regarding potential PSPS notifications for potential power shutoffs. So far, they have not materialized. They have been very specific, actually, in identifying our owned properties, you know, the hospital and the clinic and the pharmacy and other properties that we own that would be impacted by an outage if it were to hit. And so we're now getting those messages, like they go to Bob and Barbara and myself.
Yeah.
And so, you know, again, where we believe those are going to be, if any kind of significant issues for the hospital, I've been letting the board know. And so we will continue to do that as we deem that there's some potential for that. We are going to be participating in an expanded disaster drill this Friday. This is being done in concert with the Kern County Fire Department. They actually approached us and wanting to participate with us since we have one of the taller structures in town. They will actually be participating, pulling hoses actually up the stairs and shooting the water up on the roof. The drill will actually be a scenario as a earthquake similar to the one that hit Ridgecrest. So we will have certain damage within the hospital, you know, water lines breaking and things like that. So we're going to be practicing some evacuation of patients and departments and things like that. And so fire department will be having their teams, and all 3 fire departments will be participating: South Lake, Lake Isabella, and Kernville. And so they will be staging off campus here and then applying, coming into to work on a fire that is up on the roof.
This is happening when?
This is happening this Friday.
Okay, Friday. Is that anything that we want to, I can help?
We will be
alert-
taking pictures
alert
and stuff
people
like
and
that,
say,
obviously.
you know, this is a drill, this is only a drill?
You certainly could. Fire is also doing notifications as well, so that
Okay.
People don't get alerted when they start seeing fire hoses on the roof. going
Yeah,
on.
my phones will light up.
Exactly. That's a
not
good-
before Facebook lights up.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So, but it's nice, you know, this is something we really had wanted, you know, after the Erskine fire, because we had virtually no contact with these guys. You know, we started these meetings that Mark put together of having first responders from police and fire and so forth. And I think we've created a relationship now with them where they're reaching out and saying, hey, we really want to work with you guys on more on a regular basis on drills and stuff like that. So this is our first one. So we had one a long time ago with the bomb threat and everything else.
Oh, yeah, that was Sheriff's Department. They never called us either. They didn't tell us we had a bomb in the building. It was not successful. They did
Our
get,
part was. It's
our part was, and they did get the hostages out, but the bomb went off and blew up the building.
Couldn't find the bomb
Couldn't find
being
the bomb.
planted, that's right. So,
Lack of communication among the different departments.
This
of
is
the
why we
Sheriff's Department.
practice.
Which is why we practice. Yeah.
so we're happy to have the fire department coming out and working with us. We're also going to be participating in the statewide drill later this year. And we were selected as a facility that will work with Current Medical Center. It's basically a patient who will arrive in our ED with suspected Ebola. Our job is going to basically to identify, isolate, and then get that patient transferred to Kern Medical. So we'll be working with their team and so forth. But
When's that one?
do we have the date on that one?
We don't have an actual, well, I have an actual date for the statewide drill, but the actual Ebola transport's gonna be done a week or so before, because they don't want that to be detracted by the whole statewide drill. So in late October, I should have a date shortly, where we are literally, yes, and been selected as the hospital to provide an Ebola patient, which will be treated here, and then actually transported in their, whatever the device, vehicle that they're going to transport in to KMC, and then KMC will set up for receiving, et cetera, as a practice. So that should be fun.
Great.
Okay. We have a meeting tomorrow with our IT consultant going over our IT risk assessment. Our correction plans that were identified a year or so ago, we've been well underway in making those changes to secure our access into our systems and so forth. So he'll be here to review our progress on that, and so we're happy to have him coming out. Also, we received plans for seismic retrofitting. We reviewed the plans for seismic retrofitting with our architect this morning. We've been making great progress on the departmental spaces. Again, this is where we came to the building committee asking for the approval to go ahead and try to get the plans finalized before the end of this year so that we can get them submitted to OSHPD, so that we can get in under the 2016 building codes instead of the 2019 codes. And so we met this morning for a couple hours and made some great progress. I'm very pleased by what I saw with the new emergency department. Looks great. And some of the other departments as well. The admitting area, we met with Judy and Sherry this morning.
And you managed to squeeze 10 beds into the ER.
10 beds into the ER, right. So, nice big open floor plan kind of thing, and with private spaces, for the most part. And so, anyway, we're continuing on with that, and at the next building committee, we'll give an update and show some of those plans as to where we're at. We'll also be holding our annual cost survey. This is required for critical access hospitals. That will take place on November 18th. Also flu shots have arrived, the first batch of those, and Greg, I guess, will be starting giving those out to the employees tomorrow. Not sure when the next batch will come. Did they give me any indication?
No.
Okay. So, also, in response to the lady last board meeting who was talking about the water runoff on our front lawn, we've made adjustments. We've cut down the number of days that we water. We've fixed some broken heads that we found out there, and it's gotten substantially better. And so we're continuing to monitor that.
Yeah, and the last Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, of course, you all know we had winds all night long.
Yeah.
When the winds blow at night, it blows some water onto the sidewalk. So those next mornings, we did have some runoff, but prior to that, with all of the adjustments we had made, we were down to pretty close to zero runoff. But the winds didn't help us. Now that the winds have stopped, we should be back.
And now we're killing the sunflowers down the street.
Somebody sprayed those, I'm assuming the county. Those have been sprayed, they're dying.
And last, I had a call with Bill Walker, who's the head of Kern County Mental Health, regarding a number of issues. One of the things that he had shared with me was that he is going to be trying to put together probably a meeting on a quarterly basis with his county staff, as well as some hospital administrative folks to talk about mental health needs and so forth, and where we might be able to work together to develop programs. And so I told him we're absolutely in. Just tell us the day and where, and we'll be there. And so had a very good conversation about that. Since our meeting that we had with him and Mick Gleason, they've been extremely cooperative, and we've seen some tremendous changes with College Community Services and their responsiveness. And so very happy to continue working with them and work on some new services for the hospital. That's my report.
I have questions.
Okay,
May I?
yes, go ahead.
So I have 3 questions, Ken. One, it seemed like the last I looked, and I don't remember the bill number, but it was that bill on the seismic retrofit and putting that off. Did any progress happen with that?
Yes, it
The
is.
last
As a matter of
minute?
fact, it was actually made into a 2-year bill, so it actually will go to the legislature this coming year.
Okay.
And if you take a look at and I think it's it's either 658 or 586. I'll get you the number. I'll forward it to you. It's probably back in my notes somewhere. But the bill now specifically states that it is primarily to replace, to retrofit the emergency room, the surgery department, and post-surgery recovery. Those are the three areas, and that's kind of what we were told and what they've been pressing for. That those are the important areas that really need to be up and open during a earthquake or significant earthquake. And then the plan is to obviously work on how care is going to be provided immediately after an earthquake. Because again, with most places, it actually occurs outside of the hospital, not inside, with the tents. And that happened with Ridgecrest. They sent the tents up in front of the hospital out there, and that's where they treated patients and so forth. So the language of the bill changed dramatically. I looked at it a couple of weeks ago and was very pleasantly surprised to see now there's something in writing that reflects what we were being told.
Right.
And so that was Portantino that was putting that forward. And so there's still some modifications that are being made to it, but what I saw was exactly what they were telling us they were going to be shooting for.
Great.
So I'll get a copy of that out to you. I can download that and shoot it to you.
I had printed it out and thought, where did all this language come from? What does it mean?
Initially, it was like 2 paragraphs, and
Yeah.
I'm like, where's the
Yeah.
substance here?
And I didn't know if it was going the right direction. I'm so glad to hear.
Yes, when I looked at it just a couple weeks ago, I was very pleased by what I saw. It was very consistent with what we were being told.
Okay.
And like I said, hopefully that will go through, because remember, our surgery department and the recovery area are in a seismically upgraded building now. They're in the new building. And so we do have some NPC, the non-structural performance stuff that has to be done, but that's substantially less dollars than the non-structural, or the seismic and so forth, the
Right.
SPC. And so, so the ED is obviously our key focus with the plan. So if the grant comes through, I mean, obviously if the grant comes through, we'll do all of the areas for acute and the other areas as well, and ER. But as we said, if the grant doesn't come through, then, you know, our plan is to start with the ER and begin moving forward and do it a piece at a time until we get everything where it needs to be. So anyway, that's where we're at. The word we get from Cal OES is that they will probably make their decision as to which projects they're going to approve in November. They had 1 year from the date of the instances to make that happen. And so we were told sometime in November they'll make their decision. And from there, then those will be forwarded, the projects will then be forwarded on to FEMA for FEMA's review. And like I said, in our conversation with FEMA was telling us, well, we're not gonna have anything to do with the approval of the projects. And so I think what we figured out is that Cal OES will decide who gets funded, then it goes to FEMA for FEMA to review the project and make sure that it meets their requirements. And because I said, even if FEMA come back, I was reading something that said if FEMA comes back and makes some changes, then it might delay when we get the money, but it's not gonna not get the money.
Right.
So I think it's more of just making sure that certain criteria of theirs are being met in projects, so.
The only other question I had was, the notices you've been getting from Southern California Edison. I got a notice from them that they're gonna have a public meeting up here on October 10th in the evening.
Yes.
Are we gonna be present there?
I plan on
Are you
being
gonna be there? Okay.
I'll be there as well.
No, you won't unless you're going to San Diego.
Oh.
We'll be there.
Well,
Yeah.
well, I'll be there if my wife's birthday's on the 10th, so.
Oh, no.
We'll
Take
see.
I will be there when you're there.
They have been good about being specific about notifications. I mean, if you have an address that they feel will be effective, they personalize the notification for you.
What this meeting is about is to
I thought you meant they were having a meeting up
discuss
here.
with the public what they have done for remediation of the hazard. So I'm assuming they're gonna talk about which lines they've gotten replaced with the new, better power lines, and what poles have been replaced, what maybe remediation of undergrowth has been done. That's my understanding of the meeting on the 10th.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what their intent is. I think it's important for us to be in a public forum and say, this is what our concerns are if you shut our power off, and this is how it's gonna impact our community.
Oh, they got all upset with me, cause I went to one of their meetings and I riot at
And
it.
I think we should do it again.
Yes, we wanna keep that pressure on.
Yeah.
Next
Thank
place.
you. That's all I have, thank you.
Tom? Are there any other questions for Mr. McGlue? Okay, thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Item 5 is the Chief Nursing Officer report. Mr. Gordon, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. So I went to the conference on the opioid epidemic in America, and to segue off of what Tim was talking about with Bill Walker, I'm excited to hear about what he's willing to bring to the table with the community in mind, because that really is what I took away from that conference, is the community has to really support a program, no matter what program you put into place. There's a lot of medication-assisted treatment program opportunities. There's Narcan is being distributed or actually prescribed with every opiate that goes out the door. I mean, they're literally getting that I don't know what the word would be, but they're just automatically prescribing Narcan.
Mandatory association.
It's almost a mandatory, yeah. So there's a lot of talk about telemedicine being involved. We are already involved with telemedicine and behavioral health, so there are not very many pain management doctors who are willing to prescribe that from a telemedicine place just yet. But what we need to do, and what I think that we're going to do here at the hospital, is through our CAPS committee, we want to address some of these things within our community. We're going to invite Bill Walker from Mental Health Services, because behavioral health really, a major component of behavioral health is opiates. It's any kind of drugs, really, addiction, things like that. So our focus is to try to address that, identify what our problems are, and then how we can really look into providing some medication-assisted treatment. So I was kind of disappointed with attendance. There were probably 300 seats in the audience, and only about 100 people were there. And most of those were speakers at other times of the day and their entourages. So it was kind of interesting. The people that were in the room were very, very caring and wanting to solve the problem, but the big elephant in the room was, who's going to fund it? Where's the money going to come from to fund these programs and really address the real opiate problem? So we do have a serious problem. Until we get serious about mental health, depression, and pain management, we're probably not going to solve the crisis. It really isn't going to happen. And the other thing I took away, like I said, was it really takes a village to make it happen. So that's what I took away from that. We are in our own facility, in the ER, we are looking at who's prescribing the most narcotics, and we're developing trends for audit trails and things like that to kind of point out to some of our providers, hey, did you really need this one or that one? We haven't questioned them on it, we're just collecting data at this point.
Well, we've shared that data.
We have shared that data.
Just so they kind of know where they stand in terms of how many they're prescribing, so.
There have been, and I will say there have been complaints from parents of students in school who felt like the physicians in the ER were literally saying, you know, your son or your daughter has a real problem, they need narcotics. And the parent was like, they don't need narcotics, I don't want those. So there have been some concerns in that area, so we, you know, and maybe the physician's right, maybe he does, but the parents' wishes are really twofold there, so. Anyway, so I just want to reiterate that the CAPS committee, our Critical Access Hospital Patient Safety Committee, there's many entities. Lisa Wiley's involved with that, and I actually issued an invite to Greg through an email. I would like for our own providers in the clinic to kind of get behind this and see what they have to offer and bring some real meat to the table. I don't want to just kind of look at it and not do anything about it. So. As I said before, and Tim mentioned that we were going to have that risk assessment, a lot of the things that came out of that risk assessment from my perspective were how am I using some of our data to improve admission times and Med Verify and things like that. So I've been using that. I've got a lot of data right on that TV. I can show it to you. Heidi would probably shoot me if I tried to bring that up right now, so I won't do that, but if anybody wants to see my data, it's really cool. All right, and then finally, I got an email back from Gina Patterson, who is the project manager for the Nurse Assistant Kickstarter program that offers grant money to get a nurse assistant training program going at our facility, and she's looked over my entire application, has approved us for the first phase of the grant monies. They're going to be issuing a check request tomorrow morning, and Chad will be getting that check in the mail as soon as possible. Tomorrow, all the documents, we're going to try to get them signed. We'll get that submitted to the CNA proper licensing and certification board, and then I don't know how long it's going to take once they have it, but I want it off my desk. How's that? But anyway, so we've been approved for the first phase of that grant project. The grant project requires that the approval come back before the end of December. I'm hoping for it to be back earlier than that. So I want to get it started. We have a real need for CNAs. Let me say it that way. All right. And so that is the good news that I have, and that's my report.
Great. Questions for Mark?
Sir.
I have a question. So on the opioid issue, has public health been involved at all? I know that mental health has, and I don't know if public health has recognized this as a public health emergency, and
They have.
Are they bringing any dollars to the table?
That's a good question.
Because
I haven't seen any.
that's what they do.
There is a lot of grant money. I think President Trump signed off on some dollars to go towards the opioid crisis recently. So there is. So Chet might have some.
We may need
I
to.
think in California, many of they have the Prime program, which basically is if you want to call it an addiction type of program, a lot of addiction type of initiatives in that particular program to deal with them and how we're going to deal with them. Those facilities, the larger facilities had to have, I believe, 5 different initiatives in their program. Smaller ones like us just have one. Ours did not have opioids in it or dealing with those, but some of the larger facilities did. So some of the larger facilities do have, and they have been on that since. And this is the 4th year now.
Right.
So.
If you recall, Kaiser supported a CSI Momentum project that we created here, and we were able to take that initiative to the schools to talk about, to teach kids about those pill bottles in their parents' closet and the dangers of those. So that was a successful program. We got several, I don't know, $14,000 for a grant from Kaiser even. So it was a good deal.
Well, I'm just wondering, because, like you've said, one of the components of a successful program is going to be community involvement, and that's, we can do a certain extent of that, but it's not our primary role, and it is public health's role.
Agreed.
And so maybe if they know that we're doing something, maybe they can devote some resources to help us out.
The Prime program is changing. It's the first phase of it's ending and changing into some other things. And we don't know yet what CMS with the Department of Health Services is going to strategically give proximate or priority to, but that remains to be seen. The situation, we're not talking about peanuts even in the first phase of the Prime program that had these initiatives. Of course, you have to meet certain benchmarks, certain criteria as you went along, but it was what we actually got out of it for our side for the behavioral health was $750,000 a year for 5 years. So that's substantial dollars.
That's a lot. I'm just mentioning it, not so much from the financial gain for us, but
So,
by
Ross, if I
tapping
could-
those county resources.
For me to address your question, I think that because Tim and I and Lisa went to Mick Gleason with Bill Walker across the table, had a very captive audience at that point, and made our our concerns known to Mick Gleason, what the problems were with College Community Services, and the fact that we were waiting 2 weeks to get appointments with them, and their minimal participation in the community. There was a real, a certain sense of, I think, apathy on the part of, you know, their program up
Leadership
here
and so forth.
and the leadership. So I think I've heard, and I can't substantiate this, I don't have anything in front of me, but I have heard that they are under new leadership now, and that Bill has definitely allocated some funds to start bolstering their staff and their employees up here. So there is real focus on it. I think we brought that out. And so I think Lisa also has told me that the appointments for emergency and critical assessments are occurring much more.
We got tremendous response on that.
Great,
So
great.
they're actually
So,
coming to the
as far as
hospital.
the county's concerned, yeah, I think county mental health is really helping. I don't know if CDPH or public health is doing anything.
Yeah, I'm not even talking at the state level, I'm talking about Kern County Public Health Department.
Right.
Actually,
That's
the
a conversation
KMC
we
had
had
a very robust,
with them.
KMC has a very robust prime program. I don't know of all of their initiatives, but they have to have 5 initiatives.
Right.
And so it is a part of their review and service and priority.
Yeah, but Kern Medical Center is a separate entity than the Public Health Department.
Yes.
Separate funding, separate leaders, and public health's role is community outreach, community involvement. They've got an amazing amount of
Well,
resources, and so I just
Just so
keep
you're-
that in mind
I'll
as,
tap into that.
Just so
Yeah.
you're aware, because I sat on on Kern County's community needs assessment, and that was one of the top things that was identified as a part of that, which was our #1 issue here when we did it. And so I know they're working on it. I've not yet seen the list of strategies that they've put forth yet. They haven't shared those with us. But that was identified by almost everybody in the room as being a huge, huge issue for Kern County.
okay, thank you guys.
Go ahead.
And I want to make sure you know that I was at TPC Scottsdale and I didn't play golf.
Underneath.
Mark, I just had a quick
Yes, sir.
comment. Just to kind of feedback on what Ross said, because you indicated in your report earlier about, as a hypothetical example, a kid comes into the ER and the doctor wants to give them narcotics and the parents say no. Is there, what kind of alternative plan do you have for kids like that, like counseling or something like that, or do you have anything that?
That's what we're trying to organize.
Okay.
Some sort of, and I can't really speak to the provider side, only because I think that it would be more appropriate if I had an ER physician here to say, this is why I think your son or your daughter needs this medication. You know, there are different, drugs affect different people, or different people get addicted to drugs a lot quicker than others. Some people never develop addictive behaviors, some people do. That is one of those things that I learned during that conference, is that, you know, a kid could pick up a habit in a couple of days of treatment. So, you know, it's really kind of, it just depends on your DNA and your makeup, but.
And discovering alternative pain management methodology.
Well, and that's the thing, you know, a lot of times Advil and Motrin are good for fractures, they really are. Ice, you know, immobilization is probably the most important thing, to stop moving it. And, you know, it just, we did have, I'm not gonna go into that, but, there are some that demand pain medication, I'll just say it that way. Well, you don't need it. So the point is, there are 2 sides to that coin, and we let the providers manage that. So, and it is up to the parent to get that prescription filled.
Sure.
One of the things, John, we're also doing in that prime program, a part of it is if the ER physician feels that he needs some support and some direction as far as referral services,
Absolutely.
and to what referral sources we're gonna send, that's the basic, he can talk to our people, and they will go over and they will work with the patient and their family for those referral sources.
We have an expert that comes over to the ER when we call them for behavioral health needs. I mean, Lisa will come over to the ER when there's a patient in there. She'll come over to Med-Surg and she'll evaluate and interview patients and get them those resources they need that are available in the community. That's one of the things that the Prime program is very good about doing. So,
Okay, good.
all right.
All right, thanks, Mark. All right, item 6 is the CFO report. Chet, you're on.
Let's crunch some numbers.
I'll talk a little bit tonight about our operational performance for the month of August. A year ago, the months of July and August were some of the best months we had in the entire fiscal year. And with a situation of that being a reasonable result of having water in the lake and having a lot of visitors during the summer. And this year was no dramatic difference for the 2 months, except that the month of August was not as robust as the month of August in the prior year. We actually had in our acute services, as far as acute admissions, the same number of average daily census patients for acute and swing. Let me just start with acute. With acute that we did in the year before, in the month of July, but not in the month of August. We actually both months this year, fiscal 2020, we had 3.7 average daily census in our acute beds. Last year, interestingly, we had 4.0 average daily census in our budget. This particular year we had 4.0 in our budget, and last year we actually saw 5.2 patients in our beds in August, bringing us to an average of 4.5 for 2 months, where this year it's 3.7. So we didn't do quite as well. In our swing beds we did significantly less well in this year. We only had 0.3 patient average in the month of August. For the year before we had 1.5. That's a significant drop, as you can see. And 0.8 for the 2 months this year and 1.2 last year. Now, I will say that in the month of September, we found a way to get our swing beds up a bit and our acute beds up a bit. Some of the best census that we've seen in a long time, and actually pretty much made our budget in both those particular product lines. The long-term care continues to be a real problem area for us. It is not seeing nearly the patients that we would hope it was going to grow and see. However, we are doing about the same level, actually even a little bit better in August than we did in August of last year, but that's still a significant drop from what we would like to see and what we used to have. So for the month of August, we had 57.3 patients out of our 74 beds occupied. Last year it was 56.2. You can see how far down that was. The year-to-date, this year it's 58.1, and it's 57.1 last year. So we gained about 1 patient a day over the 2-month period, but we have a long ways to go where we have 74 beds that need to be occupied. Some of that has to do with our staffing problem that Mark addressed as far as the school for internal training and school for the CNAs. I believe that's going to make a big difference depending upon how the students we actually put in it, and it's going to take a little time even to get them through the course and get their licenses. But if we can try to have try to have students who will remain in the area for the most part, that strategy is going to be great for us. We just need to figure out how we develop that strategy. In the emergency room, we this year, obviously, it's been a busy season for visitors and tourists and workers on the dam. We actually had a very significant month in the month of August, 696 visits. We continue to have good volume in the emergency room. A year ago, we had 628 in the month of August. We've had 1,334 for 2 months, and last year, 1,310. The biggest problem is that of those patients, a year ago we admitted, for example, 6.05%. This year we only admitted 4.6. So although we're seeing more visits, we're not admitting more patients. Now that could have to do with the intensity of service or acuity of those patients. And it's a situation where we certainly, I don't think, from what I've seen, had any less acuity than we had a year ago, but we are not admitting as many. That was true through the first 2 months. I will tell you that that's not necessarily been the case for the month of September. The month of September has been an excellent month in acute. I don't know what the percentage is going to be yet that we're going to admit as a percentage out of the ER. I will tell you that 99.9% of our patients come from the ER, so it should mean that it would be better, but that remains to be seen, improving with the numbers once we have those. Our referred outpatient services were down a little bit from last year. It's not dramatically, but we had 1,188 last August of a year ago and 1,121 this year. Our intensity of service in the month of August was down, and I can't tell you why. I'm talking about your ancillary services. I can't necessarily tell you why, but although we had some areas that weren't bad as far as utilization, the intensity of the ancillary services for those visits were actually down. It would be a good thing if we were a DRG hospital. It's not a good thing. Sorry. It's not a good thing for us being a critical access hospital. The clinic visits actually have been continuing to go up. We've had some of the best numbers that we've ever seen in the clinic. We actually had 1,398 clinic visits in the month of August. There were 1,378 the same prior year. For 2 months we've done 2,887 and 2,494 in the prior year. We're packing them in for all of our providers over there to the point that, thank goodness, we basically are almost ready to get in our clinic, our mobile clinic. We may be using it significantly for sitting there and seeing more patients. And we have a student coming. They'll give us another provider for a period of time. Grace?
Just 1 month. Just 1 month.
Just one?
Yeah, just 1 month.
It's rotation.
Oh, he's only be here 1 month?
Yes,
So he's in his rotation?
yes.
Okay. So that's not, well, at least it's a month. Probably, at least some of the patients that aren't looking for scheduled visits, but there may be a point in time when we've got to expand our staff again, because your schedules are pretty full, are they not, great?
Yeah.
Can anybody beef their schedules up better than they are? Pretty tough, right?
There's some potential, but it's tight right now.
Do we have a parking area a designated area where that's gonna be once it gets here?
You will be getting CERs at the next finance meeting to talk about that. Right, Greg?
Yes.
Or no, actually, it's the next
Building.
construction meeting.
Yeah.
So, before the end of October, you'll see some information on that. Our specialty clinics, which are behavioral health related, for the most part, continue to do well. Additionally, we have 328 specialty visits. It does have some non-behavioral visits in there, but the vast majority of them are. We did 302 a year ago, same month, and for 2 months, we've done 641 specialty visits and clinic visits versus 597 in the prior 2 months prior year, those 2 months. We also, our retail pharmacy continues to grow back some of the business that we sadly lost when we had some issues. We actually filled 3,528 scripts in the retail pharmacy in the month of August. For a year ago, we filled 2,951. And so there's some reasonably significant growth down there. For 2 months, 7,225 versus a year ago, 5,675.
Chad, they made money this last month, didn't they, the pharmacy?
They what?
Didn't they make money in August?
Actually, in the month of August, they did make a little money on a fully allocated basis. Yes, they did. For the first time probably in 2 or 3 years. And they could have made more if they had not overbought their supplies in the month of July. They beefed up for a vacation, and they could have not beefed up their inventory quite so much. Anyway, the total dollars, actually, we again, it was mostly our outpatient referred patients that were down, which has not been the case in most other months, and the intensity of service that related to those ancillary services. So actually a year ago we generated $9.5 million in gross charges, and for, in the month of August. But in this particular month of August, in this fiscal year, only $9,290,000. So what that did was take our collectible down to $2,300,000, and our collectible for the August prior year was $2,452,000. The other part about that is that our expenses, our operational expenses, from the $2,000,004 in the prior year, we only spent $2.3 million. You expect for operational expenses, you expect your annual budget reflected that we would have an inflation factor to some degree, but we didn't hold our expenses in line, especially in the area of contract labor, where we were $51,000 over our budget in the month of August, using lots of expensive registry. So we actually were $115,000 under our budget, but significantly over the prior year, where the gross revenue was not. So from operations, instead of the $52,000 we were supposed to make from operations as a margin, and a year ago we made $101 in the month of August, we lost $150,000 from operations before any non-operating items. The non-operating items were not as high as they were in the prior year, only 4,700 negative versus 11,000 negative, but it actually just contributed to an additional loss, where in the prior year we made $89,000 in the month of August, and in the month of August in the current year we lost $154,000. For the year to date then, we are at $89,000 loss for 2 months. Our budget was to make $11,000 after 2 months, and a year ago we had made $94,000 after 2 months. However, I'm encouraged by the month of September, and from all indications that I have right now, with the possible, and I think even with the SNF, it's at par where it was at least in the previous months of this year. I think we'll see a small profit in the month of September, because our med surge, our ER was up both months, but our med surge is up even higher. And it is probably, when you're sitting, we actually had an average of over 8 patients a day in our med surge. That's acute and swing. That's, when you can do that, when you see over 8 patients a day, as an average daily census, almost always we make money. So, I mean, there could be some, I don't know yet, we got a long ways to go before we get the books closed, but that's my anticipation, that we probably will have a good month in September. Cash-wise, based upon where we're doing better than what I had forecasted that the board approved in the budget before we started into this fiscal year. I had said we would begin the month of August at a negative 272,000. Actually, we began the month of August, not including our, this does not include our money in reserve with the treasurer of the state of California. But it includes money that we can use for operations. We actually started the month with almost $1 million available, 993,000. We actually took in not quite as much as I had anticipated because we actually still had some residuals in a Medicare withhold from some overpayments. So we actually collected 2.1 million, where my budget was to collect 2.5. We actually then, from that, we did not transfer any money in. We still didn't have to transfer any money in because we started with a higher balance than what was anticipated. The disbursements were before we got to non-operating were good. They were at 2.39 million, where I had budgeted 2.41. So it's not quite as much difference as I had anticipated in the cash coming in, but it was relatively close. Also, we still had some money that we needed to put back into our reserves for money that had come in from IGT before. So we put 300,000 back in reserves. We also paid a bond, the last bond payment. Well, actually, it was a payment for the next interest in February of $50,000 in the month of August. And I had anticipated that we would be getting some money in from, additional money in from, it's a timing issue, from FEMA or the California Energy Commission, 92,000. That wasn't quite in yet through the month of August, but that was still right now we actually have $310,000 worth of money that's supposed to come in from them that will pay the retrofit money and lighting that we just got completed. So as far as the cash over and under before reserves to be used for operations, we actually had, I had anticipated we'd have about 145,000 negative, not including the reserves. We had a 411,000 positive. So our operating reserves that we still had were 144,000. We actually came in at 144,000, very, very close. And our Medicare overpayment reserve, which we haven't really been touching, $7,896. So we ended the month where I'd anticipated we'd end with about $7,666, not considering any of our non-operating reserves. We actually came through at the end of the month at 563,000. Would like to see that better. I think it will. Actually, in the month of September, very last day of the month, we did get in some quality money, and it's going to substantially help us in September. So, matter of fact, I used a little piece of that and paid $50,000 on the line of credit today, and another $50,000 on the interest, although the interest is already relatively covered. So that'll take some of that debt away at this a little bit early. Situation is, cash is doing well, as long as we can continue to have the non-operating income that we have from our Affordable Care Act provisions, which basically are contracts with the state and contracts with the health plans, medical health plans. And that's my report.
Questions for Chet?
On the Medicare overpayment reserve, you were $2 off. You care to explain yourself? No, good call.
That's probably a little interesting, I suppose, because
Yeah. Always fascinates me when I see that.
Chet, Debbie had a question, then we'll cover
I
it
have a
soon.
question.
There's a few more questions.
I see, that the AP days are way down to 41.9.
yes.
And I'm just wondering, is your department feeling the love? Are you hearing that, the vendors are happier now? That, I mean, that's really quite low.
Are the vendors happier? Well, that's a
Let's
question
put it
of
this way, you
ours.
don't hear from the vendors.
Absolutely. I would say not substantially. Okay? Not substantially, I think is the best answer that I would have. Are the vendors happy? The vendors are always gonna be wanting more. That's the nature of the beast, okay? But the situation is, that's why you, thank goodness, that's why you saw us with, in end of last year, up until May, June, with large negative balances in the cash. Okay, because we were supposed to pay down the accounts payable. We did. And it's because I have been playing the float for years, and where there's a lot less money available than there was here. But we needed to see what that meant, okay? So relatively speaking, that's what we were seeing from operations, is about $1 million to over $1 million negative. We had the money come in, that it comes in just, most of it, of the money from the supplemental money comes in about May of the year, which is near the end of the fiscal year. And the county likes that, so does the state, because relatively speaking, it's their fiscal year as well. That's how it's kind of worked out. Federal government really drives it, and and it's not the end of their fiscal year. The end of their fiscal year is September 30th. But the situation is that we've come back, we don't have it, as I said just a minute ago, we're not seeing negatives in our operating cash. It's just the way we want it to be all along. Are we gonna keep payables at 41 days?
That's the question.
Probably close. Probably close. I don't know anything that's gonna upset that balance right now. Is it too low? A little bit. Okay, it is a little bit too low for the hospital industry averages. But at least where we are right now, as long as the operating cash stays, then we will probably keep it at 41 days.
Okay, thank you.
Now, something that you need to understand, since you're asking that question, is that the money, almost all of the money that's in the non-operating reserve, the $4.9 million, was sequestered, if you will, board designated as a board restricted fund for the building that relates to the grant. I can't use that money. If I needed that money right now, let's say, for example, something happened in operations and I needed $1 million, I could not use that money because it is board designated for a purpose. Without going back to the board and having it say, yeah, it's okay, you can take $1 million of that money and you can use it on operations. Now, we have there's a little bit sitting out there for operations that I never don't have a little bit of that, but it's not a lot of money. So you need to understand, probably a better approach would be to keep our payables somewhere between, certainly not over 60, but not lower than 40. I would say somewhere between 50 and 60 would be the right answer. Does that help you?
Yes, thank you.
The bulk of that money he's talking about is our 25% share. If the FEMA grant's approved, we've got to be able to put 25 in, that's their money. And so that money was set aside so we have that. So we can't touch that.
So you got
I'm not sure if it's for you or for you, it could be either one of you. I'm just wondering about the CNA program. Is there gonna be like a guaranteed job after they go through the class, or are we doing a contract thing, or?
Well,
What is
there's
that?
a,
I'm just curious.
the beauty of doing the beauty of doing this program ourselves is that we also get to do the resume. We get to see their performance.
work.
So to say, is there a guaranteed job, I would not say yes, but there's always a CNA position here available.
Yeah,
Now,
definitely.
if you qualify for that position, we will give it to you.
Okay.
How's that? Does that
That
answer your
answers
question?
my question.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chet. We don't have any old business. Under new business, there's a radiology services agreement with Current Radiology.
And we're gonna pull that, we're not able to give me the contract in time, and so, we're looking to change groups from imaging on call to, current radiology. And so
Okay.
that will probably get pushed to December, so
Okay.
they promised me they'd get that to me like right away,
So just
just
no,
talked to them today,
so just no action taken?
no action, that's on, put on hold.
Okay. Item J is director's comments. We'll start with Director Elliott. Anything?
I don't have anything to share tonight.
Director Bush, anything?
I'd just like to say, thanks again to the staff, nobody in particular, but we had a great spontaneous commercial during the Tradio program on the radio on Monday, where a gentleman called and he said, "Charlie, you're involved with the hospital, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, I just thought it was time somebody called to say what a great job they did." Evidently, a guy brought his wife in over this past weekend. She had severe bleeding. She had some nose work done, and I guess her septum ruptured or something, but I mean, she was in horrible. And they were both terrified, and everybody here, he said, just could not have been better. They ended up, stabilizing her and sending her to where she needed to go. His comparison was, and I know this is going on the record, but I will say that he said they sent her down to Adventist, and he said, we spent a couple of days there and they were nowhere near the caring level that he felt he got here. So just, it's always good to hear the good story. I told him on the air, I said, I thank you for taking the time to call. I said, as I always say, we don't hear about the thousands, tens of thousands of successful takeoffs and landings of commercial airlines. We hear about the one crash. So when people take the time to point out the positive, I like to share it with everybody else. So, good job. That's it.
Thank you, Bush.
I've got more of a question and a comment, I guess. Strategic planning event or whatever you want to call it, retreat. Because of the Brown Act, we can't communicate, we can't plan, we can't do what we need to do. And I've been talking about it for the last year. I'm talking about it to the public now. When, John and Tim, when can we do that?
That'll probably be a topic of agenda for our next governance committee, to get something planned and on there. We need to do it, absolutely, I agree with you.
Well, why don't we put it on the agenda for the board? Now? Can we do it for next month, John?
Can we put it on?
You can do what you want, I mean, it's a board issue, I mean, so clearly, like I said, I think, we wanted to talk to governance and try to plan and figure out where we wanna do it. There's some logistic stuff that's gotta be worked out
Okay, you
before
can
we
do it
commit
for
to
the
a
next
date.
board meeting anyway.
Yes, we can report back
Cool,
at that,
thank you,
that's.
thank you.
Oh, well, governance is meeting this month anyway.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, so
cool.
we'll,
Alright, cool.
we'll go on the.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
That's
Can I address that?
Sure.
So I used to do strategic planning sessions for the Board of Supervisors. All 5 members at the same time, so you can do it. They're public meetings.
Correct,
Right.
that's what he's getting at.
Gotta
So-
be
You just have to put
They-
notice out to them.
Yeah, notices and the public can attend if they
Yeah,
want to
right,
attend.
right, but
So-
we're not
But we
doing
can
it.
still do it.
But we're not doing it.
Yeah, okay.
Director Cass, is that all?
That's all.
Yeah, yeah.
Kern Valley Hospital is the greatest.
Director Cassis, do you have anything?
I'm gonna pass, thank you.
Okay, and the only comment that I had was, well, thank you for getting started. I thought I was gonna be late after getting back from LAX on a I went the speed limit a little bit, I admit, but, anyway, I got here in time, so thank you for at least getting it started.
She
And,
did better than you.
And I also did want to thank the foundation for putting on the Crab Fest a couple weeks ago, and that was very well attended. I think the fillets were a hit with the people that aren't fans of crab, so at least it was for me. So anyways, kudos to the foundation, and thank you all for coming this evening. And we're adjourned at 7:10. To our
Cooks.
and the cooks, yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
they did a great
Yes, the cooks did a fantastic job.